Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast here on a Friday, getting you into the weekend. Dan Lobby with Mary Kay Cabot and Ashley Bastock. We are going to talk Browns, and then we're going to try something a little different in the second half of the podcast. We're going to do a draft. We actually haven't done many drafts this offseason. Those are coming, don't worry. But we're going to do a draft of Succession characters. So we are all big fans of Succession. It comes back Sunday night. So we're going to get into that. There's going to be spoilers all over the place in that. Just so you know, if you haven't watched Succession, the first 3 seasons, there are going to be spoilers galore coming up in the second half of this podcast. But let's get right to it here. Browns-wise, Mary Kay, they have given us some news here on a Friday. Marquise Goodwin, who you have mentioned multiple times this week, certainly was still an option for them to sign. They do, in fact, sign him. A veteran receiver, a lot of speed. Again, this just feels like another one of those. I mean, I can't argue with it. I don't have an issue with this signing. What do you think of this addition of Marquise Goodwin?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to note once again that there is a connection here in that he has the same agent as Deshaun Watson. And sometimes when you have those connections, it's easier to get things done. I don't know if Deshaun maybe might have put in a little bit of a good word for him or whatever the case may be. But nevertheless, he's here. He came in for a workout on Monday and he left without a contract. But as I had been saying all week, that there was still a decent chance they were going to add him. Now this gives them 2 speedy receivers. You add him to Elijah Moore, who they traded for on Wednesday. And it gives them a couple of speedy options to spread the field, to stretch the field. As we talked about yesterday, though, it does mean that it's going to be tougher for some of these young guys to get on the field now when you have some of these new options. Not only do they have 2 new receivers in Elijah Moore and Marquise Goodwin, but they have a new tight end in Jordan Akins. So I'm calling this sort of a minor shakeup on the offense during this free agency and trade cycle. I think, it's going to be a little bit of a new look in terms of speed and explosiveness. And so, I think this is another good move.
Ashley, your thoughts on adding Marquise Goodwin?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, kind of like Elijah Moore, when we talked about, I think the question was, what does this tell us about the Browns? I think it's again, just pointing to the, deficits they had on offense that we thought were deficits last year were real. They didn't have that speedy receiver that can catch the ball. And I think, like Mary Kay said, it just kind of points to this new direction they're going. And I think when you have a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, you have to have those guys in that room who are able to create, who are able to improvise a little bit within your system, who are able to help him out when he scrambles. All those things, the makeup of that room right now, they just were missing that. And we already said, going into last season, it felt like they were a receiver short. So it is interesting to me. I am curious again, what this means for a guy like David Bell, what this means for Anthony Schwartz, for Michael Woods, those kind of younger guys, or in Anthony's case, a guy who's been around a few years now, who hasn't really been able to make consistent jumps in his development. So I do think it's going to be some new looks and not like something we've seen from a Kevin Stefanski offense in Cleveland before.
So, Mary Kay, one of the thoughts I had, we've talked about this has been a very good offseason for the Browns, but I guess I sort of want to couch that in that a lot of the things they've done have been to sort of make up for some mistakes and make up for some misses that they've had previously, that's fine. I mean, that's what you have to do as a GM. You're going to make mistakes and you're going to miss. But I feel like a lot of these signings, Dalvin Tomlinson, they relied a little too heavily on the young guys last year, so they go out and sign a defensive tackle. Obo, they needed a second edge rusher. They couldn't rely on those young guys. And there could still be edge rush help coming, either in free agency or in the draft. This signing and Elijah Moore, you couldn't go into next year counting on David Bell and Anthony Schwartz, who are 2 of your draft picks. So you needed to add some speed and some reliability in those spots and some veterans. So I feel like Andrew Berry has done a good job of Juan Thornhill. I should mention that too, right? They basically traded out John Johnson III for Juan Thornhill. So those are all moves Andrew Berry made. And a lot of the moves this offseason so far have kind of been to either replace some of those moves or hedge a little bit in some of those moves or just fix some mistakes or some areas where players haven't developed as quickly as they'd hoped.